Chosen one, the danger is real. But it is not aimed at you. I want you to hear that before anything else, because if you leave in the next 30 seconds, you will carry the wrong warning into the first day of August, and it will cost you the entire month. Something is entering. It is heavy. It is not gentle. And every single thing it is dangerous to has been sitting on your chest so long that you stopped calling it a weight and started calling it your personality. There is a pressure under your ribs right now. It started before you opened this message. You have been telling yourself it is stress, or the season, or your age. It is none of those. Something inside you has already run the arithmetic on what is coming toward you on the 1st of August, and the numbers do not balance yet, and the body reports an unbalanced equation as dread. That is all this is. That is all it has ever been. So here is what I am going to do with the time you give me. I am going to show you 3 things, and I am going to name each one before I explain it, so you know exactly what you are staying for. First, you are going to understand why the thing you have been begging for is the same thing you have been quietly afraid of. There is a mechanism underneath that, and it has a name, and once you have the name, you will never mistake it for cowardice again. Second, you are going to feel something that has not moved in you in a long time, in the part of you that stopped expecting to be picked. Not because I say encouraging words at you, because I am going to walk you back through your own history with one piece of information you did not have the first time. Third, you are going to be able to do something before this message ends. One specific action. It takes under a minute, and it works whether or not you believe me. And it is the difference between being crushed by what enters on the first and being commissioned by it. And underneath all 3 of those, there is one question I am going to leave open until the very end, because you deserve the full answer, and the full answer requires everything in between. Here is the question. Why would heaven call it dangerous instead of calling it good? Nobody calls a locked door dangerous. They call the key dangerous. Hold that. We are going to come back to it, and when we do, you are going to understand what you have actually been holding all these years. Now, before we go further, I want to name something you are already doing while you listen. You are scanning your life for evidence. You are checking the last few weeks against what I just said, looking for a reason to trust this or a reason to close it. That is not cynicism. That is a survival habit built by someone who has been disappointed by promises before. I am not going to ask you to stop doing it. I am going to ask you to keep doing it all the way through, and to check everything I say against your own record. If something in you moved when I said the pressure under the ribs, type the words "still here" on purpose, not as a formality. There is a difference between watching something and standing in it, and typing those 3 words is how a person crosses from one to the other. It marks the moment for you. Later in this message, you will want to know exactly where you were standing when this started. Let me give you something real before I ask you for anything else. Because you have been given a lot of promises in your life and very few payments, and I am not going to make you wait 40 minutes for the first one. Here is a symptom. See if it belongs to you. You can lose 2 hours to something that does not matter and feel nothing. But the moment you sit down in front of the thing that actually matters, the thing you know you were shaped for, a heaviness arrives in your body within about 90 seconds. Not boredom, not tiredness in the ordinary sense, a specific gravitational pull toward anything else. And when it happens, you say the same sentence to yourself that you have said for years. What is wrong with me? Nothing is wrong with you. That heaviness is not resistance to the work. It is the body reacting to a weight it has already estimated. Your system does something automatic and constant that you never consented to and never notice. It measures the size of a task against the resources it believes are available, and when the ratio comes out wrong, it does not send you a report. It sends you an emotion. Dread is not a moral event. It is a readout. There is a name for the gap that readout is measuring. I am going to give you that name in a few minutes, in full, with the whole mechanism underneath it, because the name without the mechanism is just a phrase, and you have had enough phrases. But I want you to feel the relief of the first half right now. The heaviness that shows up when you approach your real work is not evidence that you are lazy or unserious or spiritually weak. It is evidence that something in you knows the assignment is bigger than the current setup, which means the assignment is real. Sit in that for 1 second. The very symptom you have used as proof against yourself is actually the strongest available proof that something large is genuinely attached to your name. I know you are still holding the word dangerous. We will get there. First, I need you to see who I am talking to, because the next hour only works if you and I agree on who is in the room. You are somebody who has been steady for a long time in a life that has not been especially generous back. You have kept promises nobody witnessed. You have carried people who never asked how heavy they were. You have prayed for things and then quietly removed those things from your own list of expectations, not out of unbelief, but out of a kind of self-protection that looked like maturity from the outside. And there is a scene I already know is somewhere in your last 2 years. A room, late, most of the house dark, one light on somewhere behind you. You are sitting on the edge of something, a bed or a chair or the step outside, and you are not crying. That is what makes the scene distinct. You are past crying. You are doing arithmetic. You are counting the years and asking a very specific question, and the question is not, why has this not happened yet? The question is whether you are still the kind of person it could happen to. That night is not a low point in your story. It is a hinge, and I want to tell you what was actually taking place in that room, because you have filed it under the worst nights, and it belongs in a completely different file. You were not being ignored in that room. You were being weighed. There is an ancient understanding, older than most of the traditions that carry it, that the moment before an assignment lands is the moment a person feels most useless, not most inspired, most useless. The pattern shows up so consistently in the old records that it stops looking like coincidence and starts looking like procedure. The person about to be sent is almost always found in the middle of something small, something hidden, something that looks like a demotion. Gideon is the clearest example. When the messenger arrives to commission him, he is not on a hilltop and he is not in a temple. He is beating out wheat inside a winepress. That detail is not decoration. A winepress is a pit. It is the wrong place for that work entirely. He is down in a hole doing threshing work in a space designed for crushing grapes, and he is doing it there because he is hiding. He is producing food in a hiding place, at reduced capacity, in a posture of fear. And the first thing the messenger says to him is that the Lord is with him, mighty warrior. Mighty warrior, to a man in a pit, before a single thing has been accomplished. The name arrives first, and the evidence arrives later, and Gideon does exactly what you would do, which is argue. He lists his disqualifications: smallest clan, least in his family. He is not being humble. He is being accurate. Everything he says about himself is factually correct. The name he is given is not a description of his performance. It is a description of the load he is about to be given. I want to stop and be careful here, because this is where a message like this can turn into flattery, and flattery is useless to you. I am not telling you that you are secretly extraordinary and the world has failed to notice. I am telling you something more specific and more useful. When a weight is assigned, the naming comes before the capacity. That is the order. It is uncomfortable, and it is consistent, and it explains a great deal about the last several years of your life. Which brings us back to the 1st of August. I am not going to stand here and tell you that a specific event has been scheduled on a specific date for you personally. I do not know that, and nobody who is honest with you does. What I can tell you is what I have watched happen at thresholds like this one, in enough lives, in enough seasons, that the pattern is worth putting in your hands. Because you did not arrive at this message by accident, and you are not the kind of person who goes looking for a warning unless something has already started moving. A threshold does not create anything. A threshold reveals what was already assembled. And what has been assembling in you for somewhere between 3 and 11 years is now close enough to arrival that your system can feel the mass of it. That is the pressure under the ribs. That is the dread at the desk. That is the reason a normal month is landing on you like a verdict. Now let me say the thing about the word dangerous, because you have waited long enough, and you deserve at least the first layer of it. There are two kinds of dangerous. There is the danger of a thing that intends harm, and there is the danger of a thing that has enough force to change a settled arrangement. A river in flood is dangerous to the wall that was holding the field dry. Fire is dangerous to a rope. A key is dangerous to a lock, and only to a lock, and never to the person holding it. What is coming toward you is the second kind. It is dangerous to the arrangement, and here is the part that requires courage, so I am going to say it plainly. You built part of that arrangement. The small life you have been living is not only the result of what was done to you. Some of it is scaffolding you put up yourself, in a season when you needed protection more than you needed expansion, and it worked, and you never took it down. What enters on the first is dangerous to the scaffolding. That is why a good thing can arrive and feel like a threat, because a part of you is standing inside the scaffolding and cannot yet tell the difference between the structure coming down and the person coming down with it. If that landed, type, "the scaffolding, not me." 6 words that draw a line between the two, in the place where you have been treating them as one thing. Type it now, while the distinction is still sharp, because the mind reabsorbs these separations within a few minutes, unless you mark them. There is a name for the whole mechanism I have been circling. I am going to give it to you now, and then I am going to take it apart, piece by piece, because a name you cannot operate is just a decoration. But before I do, I want to hold something in front of you and leave it there, because it changes how the second half of this message will land, and it needs time to sit. Over the past several years, something was established in research laboratories that almost nobody in spiritually attentive communities has been told about, not because it contradicts anything sacred, because it arrived from a direction most of us are not watching. A small group of neuroscientists, led by a physician in New York who has spent 2 decades on this narrow question, documented something about the way the human mind is built. It explains a particular experience millions of sincere people have had and have never had language for. It traces back to work that won a Nobel Prize, and its practical form is so simple that it sounds almost suspicious when you first hear it described. I am going to tell you exactly what they found later in this message, when the ground has been prepared enough for it to mean something. For now, hold one question. What if the fog you have been fighting is not age, and not discipline, and not a spiritual deficiency at all? What if something was taken from you? Hold that question. It is going to matter more than you expect. Now let me give you the name, and then let me give you the machinery underneath it, because you have waited patiently and the payment is due. Every human being runs a background calculation that never stops. It compares 2 numbers. The first number is the weight of what is being asked of you. The second number is the capacity your system believes is currently online, not the capacity you have. The capacity your system believes is available right now, today, in this body, with this much sleep, and this much clarity, and this much room. And the emotion you feel about your own future is determined almost entirely by the relationship between those two numbers. We call this the carrier load. The carrier load is the distance between the weight assigned and the capacity available. And here is the piece that changes everything. That distance is not fixed, and it is not a measure of your worth. It is a measure of two variables. And you have been trying to solve it by attacking the wrong one your entire life. When the load feels impossible, you have exactly two moves available. You can make the assignment smaller, or you can make the carrier larger. And every strategy you have tried for the last decade has been some version of making the assignment smaller, lower the goal, delay the launch. Tell yourself it was never realistic. Call it wisdom, call it a season, call it contentment. I am not mocking that. It is a rational response to a load that will not balance. But it produces a very specific kind of life. A life that is stable and small and quietly grieving something it cannot name. The other move is the one almost nobody makes, because nobody tells them it is available. Now watch what happens to your history when you apply this. Every time you approached something large and felt yourself pull back, you filed it as a character verdict. You are not disciplined. You are not brave. You do not want it enough. You have been carrying those verdicts for years and reciting them to yourself in the hardest hours, and they have shaped how you speak about yourself to the people who love you. But the carrier load says something else entirely. It says that in every one of those moments, your system was reporting accurately. The load was genuinely larger than the capacity that was actually online at the time. Your instinct was not cowardice. It was measurement. You were not failing a test of will. You were correctly reading a ratio and then blaming yourself for the reading. You were not unwilling. You were unassembled. I want you to feel the weight come off that, because a person who believes they lack will has no path forward except shame, and a person who understands they have a capacity gap has a path forward immediately, today, in the next 10 minutes. So here is the first thing you can actually do with this, and I want you to do it while I am still talking. Say the assignment out loud, not in your head, out loud, even quietly. Name the thing you have been circling for years. The business, the book, the move, the conversation, the leaving, the starting. Say it in one sentence with no qualifiers and no explanation attached. Then say the second sentence. Say this: that is the weight, and my capacity is currently at whatever it is at. And those are two separate facts. That is the whole exercise, and it sounds absurdly simple, and it does something structural, because for years those two things have been fused into a single sentence in your mind, and the fused version is always some form of "I am not enough for this." Separating them takes about 11 seconds, and it converts an identity problem into an engineering problem. Identity problems have no solutions. Engineering problems have several. If you just did that, type, "It was never laziness." 5 words. Put them down where you can see them, because in about 3 days your mind is going to try to reinstall the old sentence, and you will want the record. Now I need to widen this, because there is a second gap, and it is more expensive than the first, and it is the reason so many of you keep saying the same painful thing to me. The thing you say is this: "It always shows up too late," or "I always see it after it has already passed." Let me describe the shape of that, and you tell me whether it belongs to you. There was an opportunity in the last 3 years that you did not recognize as an opportunity while it was in front of you. You recognized it about 4 to 7 months later, in retrospect, with a specific and sickening clarity. And what disturbed you was not that you missed it. What disturbed you was that when you looked back, the signs were not subtle. They were obvious. Somebody said something directly. A door was actually held open, and you walked past it in a fog, running the same routine you had run the day before. You have interpreted that as being cursed with bad timing, or as evidence that you are not favored, or in the darker hours, as proof that heaven is looking after other people and got to your file late. None of that is what happened. What happened is a bandwidth event. Recognition is not free. It costs something. The mind cannot render everything in its field at the same resolution, so it runs a triage constantly, and the triage is set by the state you are in. When a system is running in maintenance mode, in the low grinding hum of getting through the week, it downgrades the resolution on anything that is not an immediate threat or an immediate obligation. Opportunity does not look like a threat. Opportunity looks like an option, and options get rendered last. There is a name for this gap between when a thing arrives and when you become capable of seeing it. We call it the arrival gap. The arrival gap explains something that no amount of prayer intensity ever explained. The provision was not late. The provision was present at normal resolution in a system running at reduced resolution. It arrived on time into a room where the lights were at 30%. And now put those two together, because this is where it stops being interesting and starts being urgent. If something substantial is genuinely arriving in the season you are entering, then the arrival gap is not a historical curiosity, it is an active risk. You can be standing directly in front of the thing you have prayed about for 11 years and walk past it, because the part of you that does the recognizing is operating at the same setting it was operating at last month. That is the danger, not that nothing comes, that something comes, and you are not resolved enough to see it. I want to be careful and honest here, because I promised you I would be. I cannot tell you the specific shape of what is arriving for you. Anybody who claims to know that about a stranger is selling you something, and it is not what I am selling. What I can tell you is the pattern, and the pattern is consistent enough that it functions like a law. Capacity determines recognition. Recognition determines reception. And nobody receives at a depth greater than the depth at which they can perceive. You are not late. You are underlit. Now let me address the person who has been arguing with me for the last 4 minutes, because I know you are there, and I would rather have you as a participant than as a spectator. You are thinking that you have heard versions of this before, that you have listened to people explain your life to you in confident language and then hand you nothing usable, and you gave your attention and your hope and got charged for both. You are running a probability estimate on me right now, and it is not generous. I want to tell you that the estimate is correct, and I am not going to argue with it. Skepticism after repeated disappointment is not a flaw in your character. It is your system doing its job. You built that filter for a reason, and if I asked you to lower it, I would be asking you to lower the exact protective mechanism that has kept you from being taken apart by people with worse intentions than mine. So, keep it up. All the way up. I am going to ask you for something much smaller than trust. I am going to ask you to check every mechanism I describe from here forward. Run it against your own record. Not against whether it sounds inspiring. Against whether you can find it in your own life, in specific weeks, with specific evidence. If the pattern is real, it will hold up under that. If it does not hold up, close this and lose nothing. And here is what I would notice if I were you. You have already found 2 of them. The heaviness at the desk, the thing you saw 6 months late. Those were not general statements. Those were specific, and they landed. That is what a real pattern does. Most people scrolled past this within the first 90 seconds, not because they are worse than you, because the material only holds someone who is actually carrying something. You have been here long enough now that this is no longer curiosity. Something in you is checking a hypothesis about your own life. That is a different activity entirely. Now let me show you what the other side of this looks like, because I do not want you to spend the whole hour inside the diagnosis. I want you to picture a specific morning about 11 months from now. Nothing dramatic in the frame. You are somewhere ordinary, kitchen or car, or the first 10 minutes at a desk, and you notice something odd about the quality of the moment. There is no static. The thought you reach for is where you left it. The sentence you need arrives whole instead of in pieces. You make a decision that would have taken you 3 weeks of circling, and you make it in under 4 minutes. Afterward, you are not anxious about it, because you can actually feel the difference between a decision made in fog and a decision made in clear air. And somebody who has known you a long time says something small. They say you seem different. Not happier, exactly. More here. That morning is not a fantasy, and it is not a reward for good behavior. It is a description of what a restored carrier looks like from the inside, doing completely unremarkable things. That is what I want for you, and it is why I am going to keep going into the mechanism rather than staying in encouragement. Because there is a third gap, and it is the one that has cost you the most, and almost nobody has ever named it for you. Here is the symptom, and I want you to notice how uncomfortable it is, because the uncomfortable ones are the ones that are actually yours. You are competent, broadly, reliably competent. You handle the logistics, other people drop. You solve problems at work that are not technically your problems. You are the one who remembers the thing, files the thing, fixes the thing. If somebody made a list of the people they would call in a crisis, you are on it, and you know you are on it. And yet, the one area where you are not competent, the one place where you are strangely slow and clumsy and easily discouraged, is the exact territory you believe you were made for. That is not an accident, and it is not irony. It has a structure. Every system has a fixed energy budget, and it allocates before you get a vote. Maintenance always gets paid first. Keeping things from falling apart, absorbing the chaos that belongs to other people, holding the standing arrangement together, monitoring for the next problem. Maintenance is not optional to the system, because maintenance is survival, and survival outranks everything. Creation gets whatever is left. And for most of the last decade, for you, there has been nothing left. We call this the competent absence, fully functional and completely unavailable at the same time. And this is why the advice you have been given has never worked. People told you to want it more. People told you to manage your time better, to wake earlier, to be more disciplined about the hours. All of that assumes the problem is allocation of hours. The problem is allocation of capacity, and capacity is not the same currency as time. You can have 4 free hours and 0 available capacity, and you know exactly what that evening looks like, because you have lived it 100 times. The hours were there. The person was not, which means the years you spent believing you wasted your free time were not wasted years. They were years in which the budget never once had a surplus. You were not squandering a resource. You never had the resource in the first place. If that just rearranged something for you, type, "The hours were never the problem." 6 words. Type them, because this is the exact belief your family and your own inner voice have used against you longest, and taking it apart in public makes it harder to reassemble in private. Now, here is what you do with it, because I am not going to leave you holding a diagnosis with no instrument. The move is not to try harder inside the same budget. The move is to stop paying maintenance costs that are not yours. And the fastest way to find one is this. Think about the last 7 days and locate a single thing you handled that nobody actually assigned to you. Not something you were asked to do, something you absorbed because you saw it and you knew you would do it better and faster than the person whose job it was. Found it. That is a withdrawal. It came out of the same account your calling is trying to draw from. I am not telling you to become a person who lets things fall. You would not survive being that person, and you would not like yourself. I am telling you to notice, once, consciously, that the account is shared. Because once you have seen the shared account, You cannot unsee it, and every future absorption becomes a decision instead of a reflex. That single shift, made once, recovers more available capacity over a year than any productivity method you have ever tried. If you found yours, type "The Gap has a name." 5 words, marking the moment a private failure became a visible system. Now, I want to slow this down and give you something older, because there is language for what you are, and the language is precise in a way that modern encouragement never is. In Hebrew, there is a word that appears throughout the sacred texts, and it is translated a dozen different ways depending on where you find it. Vessel, instrument, tool, article, equipment. The word is keli, and it is used for the cups in the temple, and for the weapons of a soldier, and for the tools of a craftsman, and for a person who is going to be sent somewhere. That range is not sloppy translation. It is the whole point. In that older way of seeing, there was no separate category for a beautiful thing and a useful thing. A vessel was defined entirely by what it could hold and what it was for. Its worth was not in its decoration. Its worth was in its capacity and its readiness. And here is the line that I want to put in your hands and leave there. A keli that is not being used is not a failed vessel. It is an unused one. Those are different conditions with different causes and different remedies. You have spent years treating unused as failed. You looked at the gap between what you sensed you were for and what your life actually contained, and you concluded there was something wrong with the vessel. But nothing in your life supports that conclusion. You have held things that would have cracked most people. You have stayed intact through seasons that had every reason to break you. The vessel is not defective. The vessel has been in storage. You are not a failed instrument. You are an instrument that has not been picked up yet. And now, I want to bring your body into this for a moment, because everything we have discussed lives there, and not in the ideas. Wherever you are, let your shoulders drop about half an inch from where they currently are. You will notice they had somewhere to go. That distance is the amount of holding you were doing without knowing. Now take a slow breath and put your attention low, under the sternum, and find the pressure we talked about at the very beginning. Do not try to move it. Just locate it and hold your attention there for the length of one more breath. That pressure is not your enemy, and it is not a malfunction. It is a signal that something with mass is in your field. People with nothing coming toward them do not feel that. Let the breath out slowly, and let the shoulders stay where they landed. Something in you just relaxed slightly, and it was not because I said anything comforting. It was because for the first time in a long time, the sensation got interpreted correctly. The body will settle almost immediately when you stop misreading it. That is not a technique. That is just what accurate information does to a nervous system. There is something else your body has been doing that I want to name, because most of you have been quietly worried about it. In the last several months, your sleep changed. Not dramatically, but there is a window, somewhere between 2 and 4 in the morning, where you have been surfacing. Not from a nightmare, not from noise. You simply arrive at consciousness, fully alert, in a silent house, and you lie there for somewhere between 20 minutes and 2 hours, and your mind is not racing exactly. It is more like it is listening. You have been treating that as a problem with your sleep. I want to offer you a different reading, and I want to be careful about how I offer it. I am not going to tell you that this is a supernatural appointment, because I do not know that, and neither does anyone else who tells you so with confidence. What I will tell you is the pattern. In seasons of transition, the mind does its heaviest reorganization in exactly that window, and the waking is a byproduct of processing that cannot be done during the noise of the day. People whose lives are static do not report this. People standing at a boundary report it constantly. So whatever else it is a marker. Something is being rearranged, and it does not have room to do it while you are awake. Two other things have probably shown up alongside it: a sudden intolerance for conversations you used to be able to sit through, and a strange grief attached to things that have not ended yet. Both of those belong to the same process. The system reallocates before it announces. You start losing your appetite for the old arrangement weeks before you have any conscious idea what the new one is, which means the discomfort of the last few months is not a sign that things are going wrong. It is the sound of the load being redistributed in advance of the weight arriving. Now let me put a picture in front of you, because I want you to have somewhere to walk toward, not just something to understand. Move ahead about 2 years. You are in a room with a small number of people and you are speaking. It does not matter about what. It might be a business meeting. It might be a kitchen table. It might be a room of 11 people who came because somebody told them you would be there. And here is the detail I want you to notice. You are not performing. There is no gap between the person speaking and the person you actually are. You are saying the true thing at the true volume without first running it through the internal committee that has been editing you since you were 9 years old. Somebody in that room is about to make a decision they have been avoiding for 4 years, and they are going to make it because of a sentence you say without planning it. You will not know that happened. You will find out about it much later, if ever. That is what being used actually looks like. It is almost never cinematic. It is a person at full capacity saying an unedited true thing in a room where somebody needed exactly that. And the reason it has not been happening yet is not that you were withheld from that room. It is that the version of you who can speak without the committee requires a specific amount of available bandwidth, and there has not been that much available in years. Hold that room. We will come back to it. Now, I want to close a loop I opened near the beginning of this message because you have carried it long enough and the timing is right. I told you that something had been established in research laboratories that almost no one in spiritually attentive communities has been told about, and I said I would come back to it. I want to tell you why I waited, because the waiting was deliberate. What those researchers found is not information you already have plenty of. What they found is closer to an address. And an address is only useful to someone who already knows precisely what they are looking for. 10 minutes ago, you did not have the shape of the problem clearly enough for the address to matter. Now you do. You know about the carrier load. You know about the arrival gap. You know about the competent absence. You know the vessel is not defective. Those 4 things together form a single question. And the answer to that question is where this next part of the message is going. Type "tune me" for this, 4 words. Type them now, because there is a real difference between hearing an explanation and asking to be adjusted by it. And the next section is going to work differently depending on which one you are doing. And before I take you into it, I want to tell you plainly what is about to happen, because I want you present for it and not drifting. What I am about to show you connects something you have felt in your own body, in ordinary weeks, in your own kitchen, with something that was documented in a laboratory by people who were not looking for anything spiritual at all. That connection is going to explain something about the last decade of your life that nothing else has quite explained. And once you see it, the word "dangerous" in the title of this message is going to mean something completely different than it meant when you clicked it. So let me put everything down in plain language for a moment. No metaphor, no poetry, just the shape of it, laid out flat, because you deserve to be able to repeat this to somebody else tomorrow without needing me. Here is what you now know that you did not know 40 minutes ago. You know that dread about your own future is a ratio, not a verdict. Your system compares assigned weight against available capacity and reports the difference as emotion. That is why the closer you get to your real work, the heavier you feel. You are not avoiding the calling. You are accurately reading a gap. You know that recognition costs capacity, that the reason opportunities have appeared to arrive late in your life is that they arrived on time into a system running at reduced resolution. The provision was not withheld. The room was underlit. You know that competence in every area except your own is not a cruel joke. It is a budget. Maintenance is paid first. Creation is paid last. And for most of the last decade, there has been nothing left in the account when creation came asking. And you know that a vessel that has not been used is not a vessel that has failed. Here is what all four of those have in common, and this is the single most important sentence in this entire message. Every one of them is a capacity problem wearing the costume of a character problem. Not one of them is about your worth. Not one of them is about how much you want it. Not one of them is about whether you are chosen, because that question was settled long before you were in a position to have an opinion about it. All four are about the operating condition of the instrument doing the carrying, which means the thing that has been holding your life at a specific ceiling is not spiritual, and it is not moral. It is structural, and structural things have addresses. Now, the identity underneath all of this, because you need one sentence to hold, and here it is. You are not the person waiting to receive. You are the equipment being prepared to be used. And the entire emotional experience of the last several years, the waiting, the fog, the sense of being overlooked, makes an entirely different kind of sense once you sit in the correct chair. Recipients wait to be given to. Instruments wait to be picked up. Those two forms of waiting feel identical from the inside, and they are completely different events. That is the clarity. And clarity by itself is not motion. The mechanism is visible now. The door is visible now. What remains is the question of how it opens. Before I answer that, one thing belongs to you and not to me. Say this: in whatever form is true for you, I am not asking to be made into someone else. I am asking to be returned to full capacity. And then type, I claim full capacity. 4 words. Not a wish. A claim, in the specific sense of claiming something that already has your name on it and has been sitting unclaimed. Now let me tell you what those researchers found. In 1981, a discovery was recognized with the Nobel Prize in Medicine, and almost nobody sitting in spiritual community has ever heard about it, even though it explains more about their inner life than most of the language they have been handed. The work belonged to Dr. Roger Sperry. What he documented, across years of careful study, is that the human brain does not operate as one unit. It operates as two, a left side and a right side, built to work in synchronization with each other. Language, sequence, logic, structure on one side, pattern, image, intuition, the sense of the whole on the other. Neither one is complete alone. The design assumes both, running together, in time with each other. When they are synchronized, something specific happens that has been documented and measured. Recognition speeds up. The person perceives connections between things that were previously in separate compartments. Solutions arrive whole rather than in pieces. People describe it as a lifting, as the room getting brighter without the lights changing. And then there is the finding that stopped me the first time I read it. Studies of creative capacity found that 98% of young children test at what researchers classify as the genius level of creative function. 98 out of 100. And when the same measurement is applied to adults, fewer than 1 in 1,000 remain there. Sit with those two numbers next to each other. 98% and less than 1/10 of 1%. That is not aging. Aging does not do that. That is not moral decline, and it is not a spiritual failure of an entire species. Something happens between childhood and adulthood that systematically interrupts the synchronization between the two sides, and modern life accelerates it. the constant fragmentation of attention, the permanent low-grade alarm, the schooling that rewards one hemisphere and quietly starves the other. It is not one dramatic event. It is a slow disconnection nobody notices while it is happening. So the fog is not evidence that something is wrong with you. The fog is evidence that something was taken. And now hold that against everything we have already built together and see whether the pieces fit. Carrier load, arrival gap, competent absence. Every one of them is a description, in spiritual language, of a system running with the two halves out of synchronization, reduced recognition, reduced available capacity, reduced resolution. The old language and the laboratory language are describing the same room from two different doorways. I want to tell you about two people before I go any further, because the mechanism means very little until you hear what it looks like in an ordinary life. A woman from California described what her life felt like before any of this. She was a nurse. She had done everything her community offered her: prayer, journaling, meditation, the practices, the books, the retreats, and she kept landing in the same place. She believed the words. She could not feel the reality behind them, not in her body, not in the actual texture of a Tuesday. She said it felt like life was happening to her rather than through her. After about 10 days of doing one small thing daily, she said something cleared. Her description was that a channel that had been blocked was suddenly open, not because she tried harder, because the receiver had been repaired. A man from Texas described something that rhymed with it from a completely different direction. He owned a business and had 2 children, and had spent years holding things together for everybody around him, while his own interior life got thin and far away. He said prayer had started to feel like speaking into a wall. The signal was right. The receiver was off. About 2 weeks in, he woke up one morning and said his mind was running on everything it was supposed to be running on. The fog that had been so constant that he had stopped registering it as fog was simply gone. 2 different lives, 2 different pains, the same underlying address. And that is because of what the team led by Dr. Daniel Barone spent years building. Dr. Barone is a neurologist in New York City. He and his colleagues took something that already existed in specialized clinical settings, a whole brain activation protocol built on neural sync technology, the kind of thing that ordinarily requires more than an hour of supervised session time, and they spent years in compression and refinement, testing what could be removed and what was load-bearing, until they had reduced it to a single targeted auditory sequence of 8 minutes. 8 minutes. Headphones, eyes closed. That is the entirety of the physical requirement. They call it the genius switch. I want to be precise about what it is and what it is not, because you have been disappointed before, and precision is the only respect I can offer you. It is not a meditation app. It is not a mood soundtrack. It is not one of those tracks built around wave patterns that you have probably already tried and found underwhelming, and if you have tried those and got nothing, Dr. Barone addresses that directly. Those approaches target one narrow slice of the picture. Sound alone is incomplete. What his team built targets the synchronization between the 2 hemispheres themselves at the whole brain level, using a multi-layer protocol developed out of years of clinical refinement, grounded in the Nobel Prize work of Dr. Roger Sperry. Different mechanism, different category of result. The genius switch reconnects what modern life gradually pulled apart, and it does it in the only place where that particular disconnection actually lives, which is underneath the level where your effort operates. That is why the protocol is short and passive rather than long and demanding. Length and effort are what you need when you are training a skill. Neither one is what you need when you are restoring a connection. And you do not have to do anything while it runs. You do not meditate. You do not repeat anything. You do not hold an intention. It works underneath your awareness, which is the only place this particular repair can happen, because the disconnection did not occur at the level of your intentions either. Here is the part I actually want you to hear though, and it matters more than the mechanism. The genius switch is not for everyone. It is for the chosen one who has understood tonight that they were never the recipient waiting to be given to, that they were the instrument, and the instrument has been in storage. It is for the person who has been sincere for years without an audience, who has done the unwitnessed work, who has felt the pull clearly and kept returning to it even in the years when nothing in the evidence supported them, and who is finally willing to stop treating the fog as a character flaw and start treating it as something with a specific address. Most people who hear about this will move past it, not because they are worse, because they have already accepted the reduced version of their own mind as permanent, and a person who has made peace with the ceiling does not go looking for the door. You are still here, at this length, into this much material. That is not idle. That is the exact kind of persistence that belongs to the person this was built for. So let me tell you what it costs, plainly, because I am not going to make you go hunting for that. Colleagues who saw what the protocol did told Dr. Barone it would be an extraordinary value even at $500, and that is not an arbitrary number. In-person neurofeedback sessions of this general category run around $300 an hour. A home machine runs about $7,000. That is the landscape this sits inside of. It was not released at 500, not at 200, not at 100. It was released at $49. And on the page where his team made it available, there is an additional $10 off. $39. That is the whole of it. 4 things come with it at that number. A guided visualization from one of the highest-rated creators on the Calm app, walking through how a life unfolds across money, love, health, and happiness. A practical grocery guide listing 10 extremely common foods that contribute to mental fog, along with shortcuts that save most households over $100 a month. A manifestation text more than a century old, the source most modern material on the subject was quietly built from, which sells for around $20 on its own, and a printed infographic of the 5 habits that most reliably shape a future worth walking into. And underneath all of it is an unconditional money-back guarantee. Listen once, listen 80 times. If it does not do for you what it has done for more than 18,000 people, every dollar comes back. No conditions attached, and no questions about how much of it you used. I want to say something about why this matters now rather than eventually, and I am going to say it in the language we have been using rather than the language of a sale. Whatever has been arranged for you does not become visible because it gets closer. It becomes visible because the receiver that can recognize it comes back online. The provision is not new. The provision has been moving toward you for a while now. The only open question is whether you arrive at the meeting point with the instrument in working order or in the condition it has been in for the last several years. That is not pressure, and it is not a countdown. It is just the arithmetic of the arrival gap applied forward instead of backward. What the genius switch restores is not your calling and not your worth. It is the resolution of the room the calling has to land in. One more thing that needs saying directly, because it will save you money and disappointment. If you go searching for anything by a similar name on the ordinary platforms, you will find tracks. Dr. Barone and his team looked at them. Most of them carry no neural sync technology of any kind, because the barrier to labeling a file something is essentially nothing. The name is not what does the work. The protocol is what does the work, and the protocol only exists inside what his team actually built. Their own page is the only verified source, and that is where the link below points. So if your spirit resonates with what has been described here, the link in the description below and in the pinned comment goes to where his team made it available. Nowhere else. You can read every detail on their page before you decide anything. It is all laid out. And if it does not resonate, then it does not. And nothing about the rest of this message changes. Now let me draw a very clear line, because I do not want anything confused. A tool does not replace obedience. A tool does not replace the long faithfulness you have already given, and it does not do your surrendering for you, and it does not walk through the door on your behalf. What is being formed in you is not conditional on anything you can purchase, and any message that suggests otherwise is not worth your attention, but an instrument that has been returned to its designed condition gives what is being formed in you more of what it was meant to land in. That is all. That is the entire claim. The deeper current of this message is where we go now, and it goes considerably further than anything we have covered so far, because there is a reason the word in the title is dangerous, and we have not touched the real reason yet. We have only touched the safe half of it. Take a breath here. We have covered a great deal, and the next section asks something of you, so I want you standing rather than braced. Nothing is required of you for the next 90 seconds. Just listen. There is an old habit among people who carry things, and you have it. When a message like this reaches the part where something good is described, you brace, not consciously. You lean back very slightly, the way a person does when they have been told good news that turned out to be conditional. It is such a fast movement that you have never caught yourself doing it. I want to say something to that part of you specifically. You are not being set up. Nothing in this message has a hidden second half where you find out you did not qualify. Whatever else is true, you have already spent a long stretch of your life doing the hard version of the right thing with no audience, and that is not nothing. It is not a payment that entitles you to anything, because that is not how any of this works, but it is a fact about you, and it deserves to be said out loud by somebody. You have been faithful in an empty room for years. I want you to hear that acknowledged before we go any further. All right, now, the part I have been holding. I told you at the beginning that dangerous is a strange word for heaven to choose, and I gave you the safe half of the answer. Dangerous to the arrangement, dangerous to the scaffolding. That half is true. Here is the half I did not give you. The reason it is dangerous is that being used costs something you have not yet agreed to pay, and you will not find out what it is until you are already carrying the weight. Every instrument that gets picked up loses the option of being decorative. That sounds obvious until you notice how much of your life has been built around keeping that option open. Let me put that in the language of your actual weeks. For years, you have described yourself in a specific way to the people around you. Some version of, I am figuring things out. I have a lot of ideas. I am working on some things. That description has done something enormously useful for you. It has kept you unmeasurable. As long as nothing has fully launched, nothing can fully fail. And as long as nothing can fully fail, the version of you who might have been extraordinary remains intact and unfalsified, living in the future, permanently possible. I am not saying that to shame you. I would defend that strategy in front of anybody. It is what a person does after they have been humiliated once for reaching. It is intelligent self-protection, and it has kept something alive in you that would have been crushed otherwise. But it has a cost that compounds quietly, and by now the cost has grown larger than the protection. Because the moment you are actually used, you become measurable. The thing exists. It has a shape. People respond to it, or they do not. And the version of you that lived safely in the future has to come down and take up residence in a body, in a specific week, with specific results. That is a genuine loss. It is not a small one. And the part of you that is frightened right now is not being cowardly. It is grieving something in advance and it is correct to grieve it, because it really is going to be gone. That is the danger. Not that you will be harmed, that you will be spent. And here is where the ceiling comes in, because there is one more mechanism, and it is the most invisible of all of them. Watch for this one, because it hides better than the others. You have a limit that you obey without ever having tested it. There is a level of visibility, of income, of scale, of joy that you approach, and then, without any decision being made, you stop. Something reroutes you. You get very busy right before the important thing. You develop a sudden principled objection to the way it would have to be done. You find a legitimate reason the timing is wrong. It never feels like fear. It always feels like judgment. That is what makes it so hard to catch. Now here is the question that unlocks it. Where did you get that number? Because you did not measure it. You never ran an experiment, never approached the ceiling deliberately and found the actual limit. You inherited it. You watched somebody early in the years when you were absorbing the rules of reality rather than evaluating them. And that person had a ceiling, and they explained it to you, usually without words. They showed you what happens to people who reach too far. Maybe they reached and got hurt. Maybe they never reached and made peace with it by turning it into a philosophy. Either way, the number went in. We call this the borrowed ceiling, a limit you are obeying that was never measured for you. And I want you to sit inside the implication of that, because it is enormous. Every time you have stopped just short of something, you have experienced it as your own limit revealing itself. You concluded things about your nature, not built for that, not that kind of person, do not have the constitution for it. Those conclusions have shaped your entire self-concept, and every one of them was drawn from an experiment you never actually ran. You have been living inside data that belongs to somebody else. That is not a metaphor. It is a literal description of what happened. The ceiling belonged to a specific person in a specific decade under specific conditions, and it was probably accurate for them. It was never tested on you, and you have organized decades around it. So here is the return of agency, and it is smaller and more surgical than you would expect. You do not have to break the ceiling. That framing is exhausting and it never works, because the ceiling is not a wall you can charge. It is a rule you are obeying. Instead, find one place where you have obeyed the number this month. 1. It might be a price you did not ask for, a room you did not put yourself in, a message you drafted and did not send. Then ask yourself one question about it, and ask it seriously. Whose ceiling was that? Almost always, a face appears, sometimes with a voice attached, saying a sentence you have not thought about in 20 years. That is the whole practice. You are not fighting anything. You are just correctly attributing a rule to its actual author. And a rule that has been correctly attributed loses most of its authority immediately, because it stops being reality and becomes what it always was, which is a conclusion one person drew under conditions that were never yours. For the chosen one who felt something move when the condition of the mind was described a while ago, that path is still open in the description. It is a small step, but small steps taken from a clear mind have changed entire seasons for people, and this one takes under 10 minutes to begin. Now let me speak to the person who has heard something like this before, and it did not take. You have tried things. That is exactly why this is harder for you than for someone new. You have a graveyard, programs, practices, resolutions, a version of yourself you committed to at some point with total sincerity, and then watched dissolve within 11 weeks. And every one of those adds to a private conclusion that is far more corrosive than any single failure, which is that you are the kind of person things do not stick to. I want to give you a different reading of your graveyard. Look at what all of those attempts had in common. Every one of them required you to supply the capacity. Wake earlier, push harder, maintain the discipline, hold the standard. Every single method assumed you had surplus available and just needed to direct it better. And you did not have surplus. You have not had surplus in years. That was the entire finding of the last hour. So the things did not fail because you are unstickable. They failed because every one of them was a plan that required a resource the system did not have, and no amount of sincerity manufactures a resource. You were trying to spend from an empty account and then interpreting the declined transaction as a moral report on yourself. You are not the kind of person things do not stick to. You are a person who has been repeatedly handed plans that required capital you did not have. Type, "The ceiling was not mine." 5 words. Put it down, because the borrowed ceiling reinstalls itself faster than any other pattern we have discussed. It will be back in your thinking within a week, wearing completely reasonable clothes, and you will want the record of the night you saw it clearly. There is a man in the old records who had this exact argument, and it is worth telling you how it went, because the ending is not what people usually report. Jeremiah is young when the call comes, and his response is immediate, and it is not spiritual at all. He says, in effect, "I do not know how to speak. I am only a child." He is not being modest. He is making a competence argument. He is saying the assignment exceeds the instrument, which is precisely the calculation we have been discussing all evening. And what comes back to him is not encouragement. Nobody tells him he is stronger than he thinks. Nobody tells him to believe in himself. What comes back is a piece of information about sequence. He is told that before he was formed, he was already known, and before he arrived, he was already set apart. Read what that actually does. It moves the entire event backward past his own timeline. It says the assignment was not generated in response to his qualifications, so his lack of qualifications is not relevant data. He is arguing about whether he is enough, and the answer he gets is that the question is filed in the wrong department. Then comes the part almost nobody mentions. He is told he will be sent, and that he will be opposed, and that he will not be overcome. Not that it will be easy, not that he will enjoy it, that he will not be overcome. That is the actual promise attached to being used. It is not comfort, it is durability. And I want you to notice how much better that is than what you have been asking for. You have been asking for the weight to be lighter. What is actually on offer is that you will not break under it. Those are not the same gift, and the second one is worth immeasurably more, because a lighter weight leaves you where you are, and a strengthened carrier changes what your entire remaining life is capable of holding. So let me show you the room again, the one from 2 years out. But this time I want to add the thing I left out. You are in that room, speaking without the committee, and somebody makes a decision because of a sentence you did not plan. That part you already have. Here is what I did not tell you. On the drive home from that room, you are going to remember tonight, not the whole of it, one line. And you are going to have a very strange feeling, which is the feeling of recognizing that the person listening to this message and the person who just walked out of that room are actually the same person, with no gap in between, and that nothing was added to you along the way. Something was returned. That is what makes it strange rather than triumphant. There will be no moment where you become someone new. There will only be a growing series of ordinary days in which the fog is not there, and the thought arrives whole, and you say the true thing at the true volume, until one day you look back and cannot locate the point where it changed. That is how restoration actually feels from the inside. Undramatic, almost disappointing in the moment, and completely undeniable in retrospect. Hold that drive home. We are going to need it later. Now there is one more thing operating in you, and it is the most contradictory one. And if we do not deal with it directly, everything else we have built tonight will sit on top of it and slowly sink. Here is the contradiction. Watch yourself while I describe it. There is a part of you that aches to be needed, not admired, needed, to be the one somebody calls, to have your particular shape be the thing that fits a particular hole in the life of somebody else. That ache is old, and it is not vanity, and you have never fully admitted the size of it, even to yourself. And there is another part of you that experiences the prospect of actually being seen as something close to physical danger. Both are fully operational in you at the same time. That is why you can spend a Tuesday genuinely grieving that nobody needs what you carry, and then on Wednesday get an opportunity to be visible and find 11 excellent reasons why the timing is not right. You have called that hypocrisy. You have called it self-sabotage. Neither word is accurate, and both of them cost you something every time you use them. Here is the mechanism. To be used, a thing must be locatable. Nobody picks up an instrument they cannot find, which means being deployed requires being findable, and being findable is the exact condition under which every painful thing in your history occurred. Think about it precisely. The disappointments that shaped you did not happen while you were hidden. They happened after you had been located. You raised your hand, you offered the thing, you said the true sentence, you let someone see the actual shape of you, and then something happened that taught you the cost of that particular exposure. So your system did what any competent system does. It built a rule. Being found is expensive. And it has been running that rule ever since, quietly, in the background, alongside the ache to be needed that it cannot remove, because that ache is structural. We call this the unused faithful, someone entirely trustworthy, entirely willing, and systematically unlocatable. And this is the specific bind that a threshold season breaks open, which is another reason the word dangerous is accurate, because the arrival of weight forces the question. You cannot carry something and stay unfindable. The two are not compatible. And so, the season that finally uses you is also the season that ends the strategy that has kept you safe since you were young. I am not going to pretend that is a small thing. It is not. But I want to give you the piece that changes the math. The exposure that hurt you was exposure without weight. You made yourself visible while holding nothing. You offered the raw self and asked to be received on its own merit. And when it was not received, there was nothing between you and the impact. That is the most dangerous form of visibility there is, and you have every reason to have withdrawn from it. Being visible while carrying something is a completely different physical event. Attention lands on the thing you are holding. You become the person delivering, and the delivery absorbs the force. Ask anybody who has ever been terrified of speaking and then had to speak about something that mattered urgently to somebody in the room. The terror does not disappear. It relocates. It stops being about you. That is what changes on the other side of this. Not that you stop being afraid of being seen, that you finally have something in your hands, and the something takes the weight of the looking. You were never afraid of visibility. You were afraid of being visible and empty. So let me give you the practice for this one, and it is uncomfortable, and it takes about 4 minutes, and it works. Find one person this week who does not need to be impressed by you, not a colleague, not somebody whose opinion sets your standing, and tell them one specific true thing about what you are actually working toward, not the vague version, the version with a noun in it. You will notice a physical resistance as you approach it. Notice that resistance without obeying it. That is the whole exercise. You are not trying to make the fear go away. You are establishing, once, with evidence, that you can be located while holding something and survive it. One clean data point against decades of the opposite. The system updates on evidence, not on decisions, and it only takes evidence that you have actually generated. Now, while we are in this territory, there are 3 areas of your life that are about to reorganize themselves whether or not you participate, and I would rather you participate. The first is your relationships. Not dramatically, but you are going to notice that certain conversations become genuinely difficult to sustain, and the difficulty is not moral, it is bandwidth. Some relationships are structured entirely around a version of you that is stuck, and they run on a fuel that you are about to stop producing. Nothing has to be ended, but do not be alarmed when the effort required to maintain something goes up sharply and for no visible reason. That is not you becoming cold. That is a relationship that was calibrated to a smaller version of the arrangement. The second is your energy. There is going to be a redistribution, and the early stage of it feels like getting worse. For a stretch of weeks you may be more tired rather than less, because the system is doing structural work rather than maintenance work, and structural work is expensive. Do not interpret that as failure. A house being rewired is temporarily less functional than a house with old wiring. That is not a sign the electrician is incompetent. The third is your relationship with time, and this one is the strangest. The old language had two separate words for time, and we have collapsed them into one and lost something important in the collapse. Chronos is the word for sequential time, clock time, 1 hour, then the next, all of them the same size, all of them interchangeable. It is the time you have been living in and measuring your life against and losing to. Kairos is the other word. Kairos does not mean duration. Kairos means the opportune moment. The moment when the thing that was impossible yesterday becomes not only possible but almost easy, because every condition has quietly arrived at the same place at the same time, and the relationship between them is the thing worth having. In Chronos, effort adds 1 unit of work produces 1 unit of result, and you have been grinding in that arithmetic for a decade. In Kairos, effort multiplies. The same action, taken inside the opportune moment, produces a result out of all proportion to the effort spent, which is why some of your years produced almost nothing despite enormous effort, and why a season is coming in which a considerably smaller effort is going to produce something that does not look proportionate to what you put in. That is not unfairness. That is the difference between addition and multiplication, and you have simply been operating in the wrong one for a long time. And here is what makes a threshold worth noticing. The opportune moment does not announce itself in advance, and it does not wait. It is only ever recognizable to somebody whose perception is running at sufficient resolution to notice that the conditions have aligned, which returns us, again, to the same place everything in this message keeps returning to. The window does not open for the worthy. It opens for everyone. It is seen by the ones who can see. Type 1, exit Chronos. 3 words. Type them at the moment you understood the difference, because this distinction has a very short half-life in an ordinary week, and you will want the anchor. You have been listening for a long time now, long enough that this has stopped being consumption. I want to name that, because it matters more than it sounds. Most people do not stay with something like this past the first 10 minutes, not because they are shallow, because there is nothing in them that the material is pulling on. You are still here at this depth, because something in you is actively checking a hypothesis about your own life, and that is a completely different activity from listening. And if any of this has landed in a way that you think somebody else needs, press the like quietly before we go on. Not for me, because there is a specific kind of person who needs to hear that the fog is not a character flaw, and they are not going to go looking for it. It has to find them. Now let me give you a tool, because we have done a great deal of diagnosis, and you deserve something you can hold. There are 2 voices operating in you, and you have been unable to reliably tell them apart, and that inability has cost you more than any single decision you have ever made. Let me give you the actual test. because it is simpler than any of the spiritual advice you have been given about it. The first voice pushes. The second voice pulls. The pushing voice is urgent. It speaks in the language of avoidance. Do this or something bad will happen. Move now or you will be left behind. Get it right or they will finally see what you are. It creates a narrowing in the chest and an acceleration in the thinking, and the thinking becomes noticeably worse while it is happening, which is the giveaway. The pulling voice is not urgent. That is the first strange thing about it. It is patient in a way that is almost frustrating. It speaks in the language of direction rather than deadline. It usually arrives as a quiet and slightly inconvenient clarity about the next single step, never the whole staircase, and it does not argue with you when you ignore it. It simply returns, 2 weeks later, in the same shape, unchanged. That is the test, and it is nearly infallible. Fear escalates when ignored. Guidance repeats when ignored. So the next time you cannot tell which one you are hearing, do not analyze it. Wait. Ignore it deliberately for a week. What comes back louder and more frantic was fear. What comes back identical, calm, with the same quiet weight was the other thing. You have been given 10,000 words about discernment in your life, and almost none of them gave you a procedure. That is a procedure. It costs 1 week, and it works every single time. And now, I need to take you into the hardest section of this message, and I want to prepare you for it, because it touches the thing you have been most quiet about. There is a specific silence that people who are eventually used all seem to pass through. It is not the silence before the call. Everybody talks about that one. The books are full of that one. It is the silence that comes after. After you knew. After the moment where something in you finally said yes without conditions. After the clarity that felt like it should have changed everything. And then nothing happened. For a long time. And the nothing after the yes was so much worse than the nothing before it. Because now you had said something out loud that you could not take back, and the sky did not respond, and you have been quietly carrying that specific humiliation ever since. I know exactly what you did with it. You decided you had misread the whole thing. You decided the moment of clarity was emotional weather, or wishful thinking, or that you had wanted it so badly you had manufactured it. And you built a small wall around that memory, and you do not visit it. We are going to visit it, and I am going to show you what actually happened in that interval, because it is the exact opposite of what you concluded, and this is the piece that I most want you to carry out of tonight. Here is the symptom in its exact form, and I want you to check it against your own record rather than take my word for it. There was a moment, somewhere between 2 and 9 years ago, when something in you settled. You may not have called it anything spiritual, but there was a day, and you remember the room, and something in you arrived at a yes about the direction of your life that was not conditional on outcomes. It was quiet, and it was total, and afterward you felt something you had not felt in years, which was that you were on the right side of your own life. And then a season began in which everything either stayed exactly the same or got measurably worse. The people around you did not notice. Nothing external marked the moment. And within about 4 months, you began the slow work of explaining it away, because the alternative was to hold a yes that had been received by nothing at all. Here is what you concluded. You concluded that you had made it up. That is the most expensive conclusion you have ever drawn, and I want to take it apart carefully because it is not just wrong, it is precisely backward. The explanation you have been carrying is that the silence was a verdict on the yes, that the absence of response indicated the absence of a listener, or worse, indicated the presence of one who had evaluated you and declined. But look at the actual structure of what you experienced. The silence did not come before the yes, it came after it. And that ordering matters enormously, because the two produce completely different diagnoses. Silence before a commitment is ambiguous. It could mean anything. Silence immediately following a commitment, arriving specifically at the moment of surrender, is not ambiguous at all once you know what to look for. We call this the second silence, and it is not the absence of response. It is the beginning of a process that does not produce visible output during its operation. Here is the mechanism, and it is observable, and it has nothing supernatural about it, which is exactly why you can trust it. Nothing that is going to be depended on is deployed at the moment of agreement, not in any domain. A structure is not loaded the day the design is approved. An instrument is not played in concert on the day it is built. There is always an interval, and the interval always looks like neglect from the inside, because during the interval, nothing is being produced. Something is being conditioned. And here is the part that hurts and then heals. The conditioning is done by the ordinary difficulty of the interval itself, not by a special curriculum, by the specific weight of continuing without confirmation. Because think about what you actually did in that stretch. You kept going without evidence. That is the entire skill. That is the one capacity that separates people who can hold a weight from people who drop it the first time the applause stops. And there is no way to install it except by requiring someone to operate for an extended period on nothing but their own decision. You did not fail the interval. The interval was the training, and you completed it without ever knowing you were enrolled. Now let me apply this backward, because this is where it stops being an idea and becomes your actual biography. Every one of those years you have written off. The stretch where nothing happened, the stretch you describe, when you describe it at all, as the wasted part. Go back through it and ask a different question. Not what did I produce? Ask, what did I become able to withstand? You will find something. You always do, and it is almost never what you expect. Somewhere in there, you stopped needing a particular kind of approval that you used to require in order to function. Somewhere in there, you developed the ability to sit with an unresolved situation for months without either forcing it or abandoning it, and you have no idea how rare that is. Somewhere in there, you stopped performing a version of yourself that you had performed since adolescence, not because you decided to, but because you ran out of the energy required to maintain it, and discovered that nothing terrible happened. None of that shows up in an accounting of results. All of it shows up the first time real weight is applied. You were not being ignored during the silence. You were being tuned, and an instrument being tuned makes no music. That is not a defect in the process. That is the process. Now here is the return of agency, and it is a single sentence you can say tonight that closes a wound you have been carrying for years. Go back to that moment, the room, the yes, and instead of the sentence you have been saying about it, which is some version of, I was wrong about that, say this one, that was real, and the interval was not a rejection of it. You do not have to feel anything when you say it. Feelings arrive late in this kind of work, usually days later, usually while you are doing something unrelated. Say it anyway. Because for years there has been a piece of your own history that you have classified as evidence against yourself, and that classification has been quietly informing every decision you make about whether to trust an inner signal again. Reclassifying it takes 11 seconds, and it changes what you are willing to hear next time. Type, the silence was tuning. 4 words. Type them for the version of you who sat in that specific silence and decided they had imagined the whole thing, because that person deserves to hear this and has waited a long time. Now, I want to bring you back to the practical, because there is an implication here that is genuinely urgent, and I do not want it to slide past you inside all this comfort. If the interval was training, then the interval had an end point, and end points are not gradual. That is worth sitting with. Intervals of this kind do not taper, they conclude. The pattern in every account I have ever examined is that the shift from nothing happening to everything happening compresses into an alarmingly short window, and the people it happens to consistently describe the same disorientation, which is that they had adapted so thoroughly to the interval that they were not configured for the arrival. That is the thing I most want to protect you from, not the waiting. You have already survived the waiting, and you are extremely good at it. The risk is the opposite one. The risk is being so well adapted to a season of nothing that you cannot metabolize a season of something. And this is where the question from earlier in this message matters most. The capacity being described here, the capacity to receive at depth, to recognize the shape of a thing while it is in front of you, rather than 4 months afterward, is restorable. That path is in the description for anyone whose spirit confirmed it when it was described. Because a weight arriving into a system that has been conditioned by the interval, but never restored to its designed capacity, produces a very specific and very sad outcome. The person is strong enough to hold it and not clear enough to use it. They carry the thing faithfully and never quite deploy it. And from the outside it looks like they were given something and did nothing with it. And from the inside it feels like drowning in slow motion while everyone congratulates you. I have seen that more than I would like to have seen it. It is not a failure of character. It is a capacity gap, meeting a weight on schedule. So let us be exact about what is actually needed, because vagueness at this point would be a kind of betrayal. You do not need more faith. You have been operating on more faith than most people will use in a lifetime, and you have been doing it without receipts. You do not need more discipline. The evidence of your discipline is that you are still standing in a place that would have emptied out most people years ago. You do not need to want it more. Wanting has never been your problem. Wanting has been the thing keeping you awake between 2 and 4 in the morning. What you need is bandwidth, room, the resolution to see the thing when it is in front of you, and the surplus to move on it in the window while the window is open. That is the whole of it. That has been the whole of it since the beginning of this message, and every mechanism we have opened tonight has been a different door into the same room. Let me slow down, because I want to give you something that is not work. You are allowed to be tired. I want to say that in a message that has been asking a great deal of you. There is a strange rule operating in people who carry things, which is that they will grant everybody else permission to be exhausted and grant themselves none. You would never look at somebody who had done what you have done over the last several years and tell them to push harder. You would tell them to sit down. So sit down for a moment inside this. Nothing about what is coming requires you to become more impressive than you are right now. That is not the shape of it. What is coming is not an audition, and you have not been under evaluation. The years of quiet were not a probationary period during which your suitability was in question. I want to give you a picture that is smaller than the one from earlier, because the small ones are the ones that hold. It is a Thursday, some months from now. Late afternoon, that particular light. You are doing something entirely ordinary, washing something or walking from one room to another, and you stop and you notice that the background noise is gone. Not the noise in the house, the other one, the low, continuous commentary that has been running behind everything you do for as long as you can remember, evaluating, comparing, tallying what you have not done yet. It is not there. And in the space where it used to be, there is a thought about something you want to make, and it is arriving whole, and it is not accompanied by the immediate accounting of why it will not work. You stand there for a while, holding a dish or a door frame, and you have a feeling that you cannot immediately identify because you have not had it since you were about 11 years old. It takes you a minute to name it, and when you do, the name is almost embarrassing in its simplicity. You are looking forward to something. That is the whole scene. Nothing happens in it. Nobody sees it. It does not appear in any account of your life. And it is the single most reliable indicator that the restoration has actually taken, because the return of anticipation is not something a person can manufacture by deciding to. It comes back on its own, from underneath, the moment the system has enough room to look forward instead of only bracing. Hold that Thursday. Now, I have to take you into the last hard place, and it is the one you have protected most carefully, and I am going to be gentle, but I am not going to go around it, because going around it would leave the most valuable thing in your possession sitting in a locked room. There is an event in your history that you would remove if you were given the option. Not a difficult season, a specific event, and you have made a kind of peace with it, and the peace is real, and it is also incomplete in a way you can feel but cannot name. What I am about to tell you about that event is the thing I most want you to leave with tonight. Here is the symptom, and it is one you have never said out loud to anybody. The territory you feel most drawn to serve in is uncomfortably close to the territory where you were most badly hurt. You have noticed that, and you have found it slightly grotesque. It has felt to you like there is something unwell about being pulled toward the exact area of your own damage, as though you were circling a wound and calling it a calling. So you have kept a careful distance from it. You have looked for a cleaner assignment, something that does not have your blood on it. And every clean assignment you have tried has felt strangely weightless, and you have not understood why, and you have concluded that you are simply difficult to satisfy. You are not difficult to satisfy. You have been declining the only assignment that had material in it. Here is the mechanism, and there is an old word for it that I want to give you, because the word carries the whole thing. There is a garden that appears at the most weighted moment in the sacred story. In English, it is a name that has become almost decorative through repetition. In Hebrew, it is not decorative at all. Gat Shemanim. And it is not poetic. It is industrial. It means the press for oil. That place was not a garden in the sense of a place for rest. It was a facility. It was where olives were brought and crushed under stone until what was inside them came out. The name of the site is a description of the process performed there. And that is where the heaviest hour in the entire account takes place. Not in a temple, not on a hill, in the oil press. Now understand what an olive actually is. Whole, intact, undamaged. It is nearly useless. It is bitter. You cannot really eat it as it is. Everything of value inside it, the oil that lights the lamps and anoints the heads of kings and heals the wounds of travelers, is locked inside a structure that will not release it under any circumstance except pressure. The oil is not created by the press. That is the part people miss. The oil was always there. The press does not add anything. The press is simply the only mechanism by which what was already inside becomes available to anybody else. So here is the recontextualization, and I want you to take it slowly because it is heavy and it is worth it. The thing in your history that you would remove if you could is the pressing. And the reason you are drawn toward the territory of your own damage is not pathology. It is the most sane instinct you have. You are drawn there because that is the only place in your entire life where something got out of you. Everywhere else you have been intact and bitter and useful to nobody, including yourself. That is why the clean assignments felt weightless. They did not require anything that only you have. Anyone could have done them. The territory you keep circling is the one place where what you carry is not generic. I want to be careful here, and I am going to say this plainly because there is a cheap version of this teaching that does real harm, and I refuse to hand it to you. I am not telling you that the thing that happened to you was arranged in order to produce oil. I do not believe that, and I will not say it to you. Some of what happened to you was simply wrong, and it should not have happened, and no explanation makes it good. What I am telling you is something different and more defensible. What came out of you under that pressure is real, and it exists, and it is currently the most valuable thing you own, and it is presently sitting in a sealed container, being carried around by someone who is embarrassed by it. Those are two completely separate facts, and you have been treating them as one. The event was not good. The oil is not the event. The oil is yours. Now, here is the return of agency, and it is one action, and it takes about 4 minutes, and I want you to do it tonight. Sit somewhere you will not be interrupted. Bring to mind the thing you would remove. Do not narrate the event. Do not revisit the details. Skip past all of that, because you have visited the details 1,000 times, and they have never once helped. Instead, ask a single question. What do I now understand that I could not have understood without this? Wait for it. It will come slowly, in ordinary language, and it will be smaller and more specific than you expect. It will not be a grand lesson. It will be something like knowing the exact difference between someone who is asking for advice and someone who is asking not to be alone, or being able to identify a certain kind of dishonesty in a room within about 90 seconds, or knowing what it costs to stay. Whatever arrives, say it out loud once. That is the whole practice. You are not making peace with what happened. You are not required to. You are separating the container from the contents and taking custody of the contents which have belonged to you the entire time and which you have been refusing to touch because of what they came in. Now, let me put your body into this for a moment, because this one does not settle at the level of thought. Wherever you are, let your hands rest open, palms up, on your legs or on the arms of the chair. Just open, not reaching for anything. That position is the physical opposite of holding, and your hands have been holding for a very long time. Now picture the sealed container. Give it whatever form comes. Weight, size, material, all of it as it arrives. And notice where in your body you have been carrying it, because you will know immediately, and the location will not surprise you. Now, without any ceremony, set it down, not away, down, in front of you, where you can still see it, still reach it, but where the carrying stops. Take one breath with your hands still open and the thing on the ground rather than inside your chest. And here is the last part. Look at it sitting there and say this: that is not who I am, that is what I have. That distinction is the entire difference between a person defined by what happened to them and a person equipped by it. And you have just made it consciously, possibly for the first time. Let your hands close whenever they want to. That work is finished. Type the press, produced oil. 4 words, marking the moment the container and the contents became 2 separate things, because your mind will attempt to fuse them again, and it will do it within days. You have been listening for a very long time now, long past the point where anybody would call this casual. I want to name what that means, because there is information in it about you. Attention is the one currency that cannot be faked. You can perform belief. You can perform interest. Nobody performs sustained attention to something difficult when there is nothing in them being addressed. The fact that you are still here, at this depth, in this material, is not a compliment I am paying you. It is a measurement. And there is something specific about the shape of what you carry that I want to name now, because up to this point I have been speaking to you as a chosen one in general, and that is no longer precise enough for where we are. There are several distinct shapes this takes, and they are not interchangeable, and most of the frustration in your life has come from trying to operate as the wrong one. Some people carry sight. They walk into a room and know what is actually happening in it, underneath what everybody has agreed to say is happening. This is not a pleasant gift. It is largely a burden, because seeing accurately in an environment built on comfortable inaccuracy makes you difficult to be around and easy to dismiss. If this is you, you were called dramatic as a child, and you were not being dramatic. You were being accurate in a room that had decided not to be. Some people carry ending. They are the first person in a family line to stop something. A pattern, a debt, a way of speaking to children, a way of handling money or anger or grief that has been passed down so long that everybody assumed it was simply the family character. This one is lonelier than the others, because the people you are doing it for cannot see it happening, and the people it is being done to experience it as betrayal. If this is you, you have been called difficult by people who were describing your refusal to continue. Some people carry repair. They have been through a particular kind of destruction, and they came out the other side, still functional, and now they can walk other people through terrain that would terrify a person who had never been there. If this is you, your credentials are not on paper, and you have quietly wondered your whole life whether that means they do not count. And some people carry construction. They are here to build something that does not exist yet, and they have spent years around people who kept asking them why they could not just be content with what already exists. If this is you, restlessness has been the primary accusation against you since you were young, and it was never restlessness, it was specification. You were built to make something, and you have been asked to be satisfied with maintaining. Find yours, not because a label helps, because the strategy for each is completely different, and you have been running a strategy borrowed from a shape that is not yours. The one who carries sight needs to stop apologizing for accuracy and start delivering it earlier, when it can still be used, rather than holding it until the situation proves them right. The one who carries ending needs to stop expecting acknowledgement from the line they are ending it for. It will not come, and waiting for it is the primary way this particular person burns out. The one who carries repair needs to stop waiting for permission that will never be issued by any institution, because the qualification was granted by the terrain and no board will ever ratify it. And the one who carries construction needs to accept that the discomfort of unbuilt things is not a flaw in their temperament. It is the sensation of holding a design that has nowhere yet to land. Whichever of those is yours, notice that all four have something in common. Every one of them requires you to be operating at a level of clarity and available energy that you have not consistently had access to. Sight requires bandwidth. Ending a pattern requires enough surplus to override a reflex in the moment it fires. Repair requires you to hold a weight that is not yours without losing your own footing. Construction requires the capacity to hold an entire unbuilt thing in mind while assembling one small piece of it. None of them run on fumes. All of them have been running on fumes. Type, locate me and use me. 5 words. Type them as the specific shape you just recognized in yourself, because naming which one you are is the difference between waiting to be useful in general and being available for something in particular. And now I want to tell you what all of this has been building toward, because we are approaching the end of the main body of this message, and there is one final mechanism, and it is the one that actually determines what happens to you in the season you are entering. Everything we have discussed tonight has been about capacity. The load, the gap, the budget, the ceiling, the silence, the press, every one of them is a description of the condition of the instrument. But there is a final thing, and it is not about the instrument at all. It is about sequence. And getting the sequence wrong is the single most common way that a fully restored, fully prepared, fully willing person still ends a season exactly where they started it. Here is the symptom, and this is the one that has cost you the most actual life, more than all the others combined. You do not move until you are sure, and you have never once been sure. So, There is a specific pattern that has repeated in your life so many times that you no longer see it as a pattern. Something appears. Something in you responds to it immediately, in the first 4 seconds, before any analysis. And then you begin the process. You research. You consider. You wait for confirmation. You look for a sign, or a feeling, or an external circumstance that will settle the question for you. And the window closes while you are still gathering. And afterward you tell yourself you were being prudent. You were not being prudent. Prudence has a stopping point. What you have been doing has no stopping point, because you have been waiting for a category of certainty that is not issued in advance under any circumstances. Here is the mechanism, and once you see it, you will not be able to unsee it in your own history. Confirmation is issued in motion, not before it. There is no version of this where you receive full clarity and then act. The clarity is generated by the acting. It is the same in every domain that has ever been studied, and it is the reason the old accounts are so consistent about a detail that people read past. Go back to the sea. Everybody knows the story of the water dividing. Almost nobody notices when it happens in the account. The instruction is not to wait at the shore until the water divides and then walk. The instruction is to move toward the water. The dividing occurs at the water edge, in contact, after the movement has already begun. The same structure appears everywhere in those records, once you start looking. The provision shows up on the mountain, not before the climb. The bread arrives in the morning, not stockpiled the night before. The instruction is always the next step, and never the staircase, and the light is always exactly enough for the current stride. We call this the water edge law. Confirmation is issued in contact, not in advance. And I want you to feel how brutal and how merciful that is at the same time. It is brutal because it means the certainty you have been waiting for your entire adult life was never going to arrive in the form you were waiting for it. You have been standing on a shore refreshing a page that does not update. Every year you spent waiting, to be sure, was a year spent waiting for a delivery to an address that does not receive that particular package. It is merciful because it means you were never failing a test of discernment. You have not been spiritually deaf. You have been standing in the wrong place to hear. The signal transmits at the water edge, and you have been listening from the parking lot. Now let me apply this backward across your history, because this is where it becomes personal rather than interesting. Every one of those moments you have catalogued as missed opportunities. Reframe each one. You did not miss them because you were not paying attention. You missed them because you were waiting for a permission that structurally does not precede movement, and you interpreted its absence as a no. It was never a no. It was a silence that meant the next word gets spoken at the water. And the years you have spent believing you were being carefully guided away from things, when in fact you were simply never close enough to receive an answer. That is not a small correction to your biography. That is a rewrite of the entire narrative you have been telling about your relationship with guidance. You were not being denied. You were out of range. And this is the actual danger of the season you are entering, and now I can finally give it to you in full, because we have built everything necessary to hold it. Something is arriving. The instrument is restorable. The training was completed in the silence. All of that is true, and none of it produces a single outcome by itself, because the entire system waits at the water edge. And a person who has spent 15 years developing the habit of gathering certainty before moving will bring that habit into a season that specifically does not reward it, and they will stand at the edge of the most significant window of their life, doing exactly what they have always done, which is preparing. That is what being crushed by it looks like. Not disaster, not punishment, just a person, fully equipped, fully willing, fully loved, standing at the shore in the correct place at the correct moment, waiting for a signal that has already been sent to a location 11 feet in front of them. So, here is the return of agency, and this is the specific action I promised you at the very beginning of this message, 40,000 words ago, the one that takes under a minute and works whether or not you believe me. Identify the smallest possible physical action that constitutes contact with the thing you have been circling. Not the whole thing. The smallest movement that could not be described as preparation. Preparation is reading about it. Contact is the message sent. Preparation is the plan. Contact is the date placed on a calendar with another human being attached to it. Preparation is the outline. Contact is one paragraph existing that did not exist before. Preparation is thinking about the conversation. Contact is the first sentence of it, spoken out loud to the actual person. The test is simple, and it is unforgiving. If it can be undone without anybody noticing, it is preparation. If something in the world is now different in a way another person could observe, it is contact. Do one, tonight or tomorrow. One piece of contact, chosen to be as small as possible while still passing the test. And then, watch what happens in the 72 hours afterward, because this is the part nobody tells you, and the part that will make a believer out of you faster than any argument I could construct. Information arrives after contact, not before. A person responds. A door that you did not know about becomes visible. Something clarifies that had been ambiguous for 2 years. It is not magic, and I am not claiming it is. It is that motion generates information, and stillness does not. And you have been trying to solve an information problem with more stillness for a very long time. Type, I move, before the proof. 5 words. Type them as a commitment to a single specific act of contact, and if you want to make it real, name the act in the same line, because a public specific is approximately 40 times more likely to happen than a private general. And before I begin the closing of this message, there is one more thing I want to say about what happens to a person who does this in the condition most people are in. You will do the contact, and in the 72 hours after, information will arrive. And the question that determines everything is whether you are clear enough to recognize it when it does. That is the whole loop closing. The arrival gap from the very beginning of this message is not a historical problem. It is the thing standing between contact and its result. The resource described earlier is placed in the description and in the pinned comment for anyone whose spirit confirmed it, and it is worth returning to now, at this specific point, because this is the exact junction where the condition of the instrument stops being theoretical and starts determining outcomes. Before this message ends, I am going to speak something over your life directly, and there is a specific word in it that I have been holding since the beginning and have not said yet. It belongs at the end, and you will know it when it arrives, and it answers the question I left open in the first 2 minutes about why heaven would choose the word dangerous. But before we get there, there is one more thing you need, and it is not another mechanism. It is a decision, and it is the only one in this entire message that nobody can make for you. Before I take you into that, there is one more distinction worth having, because it explains something about the people around you that has confused you for years. There are 2 kinds of tired, and you have been treating them as one. The first kind comes from effort. It is clean. You feel it in the body. It responds to rest, and it carries a certain satisfaction underneath it. People who have spent a decade building something difficult have that kind of tired, and it does not corrode them. The second kind comes from friction, from maintaining a position that is slightly wrong, from holding a shape you were not built to hold for years, using continuous low-grade effort that never shows up as work. That tired does not respond to rest at all. You can sleep for 11 hours and wake up carrying it, and it has a distinct signature, which is that it is always worse on the days when nothing happened. Check which one you have. Almost everybody who reaches this point in a message like this has the second one, and they have spent years attacking it with better sleep and more discipline and stricter routines, which is like treating a misalignment with more mileage. Friction tire does not resolve through rest. It resolves through correction. Something has to stop being slightly wrong, and the correction is almost always smaller and more specific than the size of the exhaustion would suggest. So, find the friction. One place where you are holding a position that is not actually yours, a role in a family, a version of yourself in one specific relationship, a commitment you agreed to under conditions that no longer exist and have never revisited. You will know it immediately, because the moment you consider stopping, a very fast and very reasonable objection arrives, and the speed of the objection is the tell. You are not tired because you have done too much. You are tired because you have been slightly wrong for a long time, and it has been costing you continuously. Here is the decision, and I want to frame it precisely, because if I frame it badly, you will agree to something you have not understood. The decision is not whether to believe me. You can hold every mechanism I have described at a distance and still get everything available in this message, because none of it requires your endorsement to operate. The decision is whether you are willing to be used before you feel ready. Sit with that, because your entire life has been organized around the opposite proposition. You have believed, sincerely, that readiness precedes deployment, that there is a threshold of preparedness, of healing, of stability, of competence, and once you cross it, you become available for the thing you are for. That belief is the single most sophisticated form of self-protection available to a serious person, because it is indistinguishable from responsibility. Nobody can argue with it. It looks like humility. It looks like wisdom. And it produces a life in which you are permanently almost ready. And here is the uncomfortable observation. The threshold has moved every single time you have approached it. Go back and check. 10 years ago, there was a level of stability you believed you needed before you could begin. You have that now, and it did not trigger the beginning, because on arrival the requirement quietly relocated to something else. It will keep relocating. That is not a flaw in your discernment. That is what a protective mechanism does, and it will continue doing it competently for the rest of your life if it is not seen. So the decision is a small one, and it is enormous. It is whether you are willing to move at 70%, not 50%. I am not asking you to be reckless, and nothing in this message has asked that. 70%, enough to be responsible, not enough to be certain. Because 70% is what everybody who has ever been used has actually had. Nobody in the accounts you admire had more than that. They were not braver than you. They simply moved into the gap, and the gap filled, which is what gaps do when they are entered, and never what they do when they are studied. And I want to say something to the part of you that is already negotiating with this. You are looking for the version of this where you can do it without exposure, where the movement happens quietly in a way that could still be recalled if it goes badly. I know that because it is the most human response there is, and because I have watched hundreds of people do it. That version does not exist, and looking for it is how the next 2 years disappear. But here is what does exist, and it is better than what you were negotiating for. You do not need to become a person who is comfortable with exposure. You need to do it once, badly, while afraid, and discover that the catastrophe your system has been predicting for 30 years does not occur. One data point: the whole architecture of avoidance in you is built on a prediction that has never once been tested under current conditions, using an old measurement taken when you were much younger and had far fewer resources. Run the experiment once. Let the result be whatever it is. You are not fragile anymore, whatever your nervous system believes about the matter, and the evidence for that is the entire decade you just survived. And if somebody comes to mind while I am saying this, somebody who has been standing at their own shore for years, gathering, preparing, waiting to be sure. Send this to them, not as advice. People do not want advice. Send it and say nothing at all, or say one sentence, which is that you thought of them at a particular part. That is how these things actually travel, and it is how you found this. There is a person in your life who is one piece of contact away from a completely different 2 years, and they are not going to receive that from a stranger. They are going to receive it from somebody whose opinion they already trust, which is you. Now, the question. I opened this message with it, and I have not answered it, and you have carried it for a long time. Why would heaven call it dangerous instead of calling it good? I want to give you the full answer now, and it has 3 layers, and the third one is the reason this message exists at all. The first layer you already have. It is dangerous to the arrangement. The scaffolding comes down. That is true, and it is the shallow half. The second layer you also have now. It is dangerous because being used costs you the option of remaining unmeasured. The version of you who lived safely in the future has to come down and take up residence in an actual week. That is a real loss, and you were right to grieve it in advance. Here is the third layer. It is called dangerous because it is the truth about you, and the truth about a person is the most destabilizing thing they can receive. Think about what you actually asked for. In the hardest hours of the last several years, in the specific words you used when nobody was listening, you did not ask for comfort. You did not ask for an easier life. If you go back and remember accurately, what you asked for was to matter, to be used, for the thing inside you that you have never been able to name or spend to finally have somewhere to go. And a request like that has a consequence that nobody thinks through when they are making it. Because, if it is granted, you can no longer be the person who was never given the chance. That identity has been load-bearing in you for a long time. It has explained things. It has absorbed disappointments and made them survivable. It has given you a way to hold the gap between what you sensed you were and what your life contained, without that gap destroying you. And it is honest, and it is often accurate, and it has kept you standing. The moment you are actually used, that entire structure becomes unavailable. Every explanation goes offline at once. There is nowhere left to file a failure. There is no longer a shortage of opportunity to point at. It becomes, for the first time in your adult life, entirely about what you do with what is in your hands. That is the danger, not harm. Exposure to your own actual size. And I want to say something that I think you have needed to hear for years without knowing you needed it. The reason you have been frightened is not that you suspect you are small. You have never actually believed that, not underneath. In the quietest part of you, in the part that does not perform humility for anybody, you have always suspected the opposite. And that suspicion has been the most uncomfortable thing you carry, because you have had no evidence for it, and no way to test it, and no permission to say it out loud, without sounding like somebody you would not want to be. You have been afraid. You are large and unproven. And every year that passed without a test made both halves of that heavier. What enters on the 1st of August is a test. Not a moral test, not a judgment, a load test. The only kind of event that resolves the question you have been holding since you were young, in the only way it can ever be resolved, which is by application. That is why the word is dangerous, because after a load test you know, and you can never go back to not knowing. I want to be precise about the honesty here, because it matters more at this point than anywhere else in this message. I do not know the shape of what is coming toward you. I do not know the date on which any specific thing lands in your life, and I would not tell you that I did. What I know is the pattern, and the pattern says that the people who reach this particular point, carrying this particular combination of readiness and exhaustion and unproven size, do not stay in the interval much longer. That is not a prophecy. It is a description of the shape of the road you are on. And here is what I want you to do with the fear, because I am not going to tell you to stop having it. Keep it, all of it, but relabel it once, tonight, correctly. That feeling is not a warning that you are about to be harmed. It is the specific sensation of standing next to something with your name on it. It is what proximity feels like. People who are far from their assignment do not feel this. They feel bored, or vaguely dissatisfied, or restless in a general way. The dread you have been carrying is high resolution and specific, and it points directly at one area of your life, and that specificity is the whole tell. You have been reading your closeness as danger. Now let me tell you who you are, and I want you to say it with me, because there is a difference between hearing an identity described and speaking one. You are not the person who was never given a chance. That is a description of a season, and the season is ending. You are not the person who cannot finish things. That was a capacity report, and the capacity is restorable. You are not the person who has bad timing. That was resolution, and resolution is a setting. You are not the person who imagines things. That was a real yes in a real room, and the interval was training, not rejection. You are not the person who broke. That was the press, and the press produced something that belongs to you and is currently in your possession. You are an instrument that has been kept in storage through a long conditioning that is about to be picked up by a hand that knew the exact weight it was building toward before you were assembled. And you are frightened, and the fright is proximity, and proximity is the last thing that happens before contact. Now, let me put one final picture in front of you, and then we are going to close this properly. Go forward 5 years, not 2, 5. Long enough that the season we are discussing tonight is fully behind you and has a name in your own private vocabulary. You are somewhere quiet, and somebody younger is sitting across from you. They are in the exact place you are in tonight. Exhausted, sincere, unproven, quietly terrified, absolutely certain. They have missed everything and are the one person the pattern did not work for. And you are going to say something to them that you could not possibly say tonight because you do not have it yet. You are going to tell them what the interval was. You are going to tell them where the confirmation gets issued. You are going to tell them the exact difference between preparation and contact, in your own words, from your own record, with your own scars on the table. And they are going to believe you in a way they would never believe me, because you will not be quoting a pattern, you will be reporting from inside it. That conversation is the actual assignment. Everything else, the work, the building, the visible parts, all of that is real, and it matters, and it is not the center. The center is that somebody who is currently 9 years old, or 26, or 51, gets to skip 4 years of the thing you spent 9 years in, because you went first and came back with the map. That is what being used means. It was never about being impressive. It was always about being the one who went ahead into the place where the road is not marked yet, and then turned around. You have been asking why it had to be so long, and so quiet, and so unwitnessed. That is why. Nobody who took a short, easy road can lead anyone through a long, hard one. So before we move into the closing, let me hand you the practical shape of the next 30 days, because I do not want you to walk out of this with a beautiful feeling and no structure. Feelings evaporate in about 40 hours. Structures survive. 4 things. That is all. And they are ordered deliberately, because doing them out of order is how most people lose the season. The first is contact. One act this week that passes the test we established. Something in the world is different in a way another person could observe. Not preparation, not research. 1 irreversible, small thing. If you do nothing else from this entire message, do that. Because every other item on this list depends on information that only motion produces. The second is subtraction. Find one maintenance cost that is not yours and stop paying it once, deliberately. Not all of them. 1. You are not reorganizing your character. You are recovering 1 unit of capacity so that there is something available when the window opens, and expect discomfort, because the arrangement around you is calibrated to your absorbing that cost, and it will push back within about 9 days. The third is attribution. Every time you feel yourself stop short of something in the next month, ask the question, whose ceiling was that? Do not fight it. Do not push through it. Just correctly identify the author. A rule, correctly attributed, loses most of its force on its own. You will be surprised how quickly that particular practice compounds. The fourth is capacity. And I want to say this one carefully, because I have been careful all evening, and I am not going to become careless at the end. Nothing external installs your calling. Nothing purchased makes you chosen. And if anybody tells you otherwise, close whatever they are saying. What you carry was settled a long time before any of us arrived, and it is not for sale in any form. But the condition of the instrument is a separate question from the identity of the instrument. And the condition is the one variable in this entire message that responds to direct intervention rather than to time. Everything else on this list is you working against decades of pattern. That one is structural, and structural things move faster than habits do. Do all 4 and you will not recognize your own interior life in a year. Do only the first and something will still move, because contact always generates information. Now, one more thing before the closing, and it is a warning of the ordinary kind rather than the dramatic kind. In the next 3 to 5 days, everything I have said tonight is going to feel less true, not because you will decide against it, because a returning system always reasserts itself, and it does not do it by arguing. It does it by making the whole evening feel slightly embarrassing in retrospect. You will remember typing something in a comment and feel a small wince. That wince is not your good judgment returning. That is the arrangement defending itself. I want you to expect it, so that when it arrives, you can name it instead of obeying it. And when it comes, do not try to recover the feeling. The feeling is not the asset. Go back to the record. Look at what you typed. Read the specific mechanisms and check them against your own life again. Coldly, in a bad mood, in ordinary daylight. They will hold. They held the first time under scrutiny, and they will hold the second time, because none of them require your enthusiasm in order to be accurate. That is the difference between an inspiration and an instrument. Inspiration has a half-life of about 90 hours. An instrument is still an instrument on a Tuesday, when you feel nothing at all. We are close to the end now, and I told you at the beginning that I would speak something over your life before this message closes. I am going to do that in a few minutes, and I want you to be present for it rather than half gone. But there is something that has to happen first, because a declaration spoken over somebody who is still holding everything they walked in with does not have anywhere to land. So we are going to do one piece of work together. It takes about 4 minutes, and it is the last thing I am going to ask of you. Wherever you are, get as still as your situation allows. If you are driving, keep your eyes exactly where they are, and do this with your attention only. If you are somewhere you can close your eyes, close them. Let your breath go out first. Most people begin by inhaling, begin by emptying, because you have been holding an inhale for a long time. Now, I want you to put your attention inside your chest and find the pressure we located at the very start of this message. It is still there. It has not gone anywhere, and I am not going to ask you to remove it, because it is not a problem, and it never was. I want you to see it accurately for the first time. Picture it as a weight. Give it whatever shape arrives. Some of you will see stone. Some of you will see something denser and smaller than it should be for its size. Do not correct the image. Whatever arrived is the right one. Now notice something about it. It is not on top of you. Look again. It is inside you, in the center, held. You have been describing it your whole life as something pressing down, and it is not pressing down, it is being carried. There is a difference, and you can feel it the moment you look correctly. You have been carrying it, which means you are the one strong enough to have carried it. Nobody carries what they cannot carry. The presence of a weight in you for this many years is not evidence of oppression. It is evidence of capacity. Now I want you to do something small with your hands. Turn them palms up wherever they are resting. That position is the physical difference between holding and receiving. Your hands have been closed for a very long time, and not because you are grasping, because a person carrying something heavy closes their hands around it. With your hands open, say this quietly or inside yourself. I am not asking to be made lighter. I am asking to be made able. Say it once more, slower, and notice that nothing in you resists it, which is unusual, because almost every request you have made in the last several years has met some internal objection. That one does not. And the reason it does not is that it is the first request you have made that matches what is actually happening to you. Now, with your hands still open, I want you to see the room from earlier, the one 5 years out, with the younger person sitting across from you and you telling them what the interval was. Hold that room for the length of one breath. And now, let the image go and stay with what it left in your body, because that residue is the thing worth keeping. There is a particular sensation that arrives when a person sees a version of their life that is both better and completely plausible. It is not excitement. It is closer to recognition. Your system knows the difference between a fantasy and a forecast, and it responds to them differently, and what you just felt was the second one. Take one more breath and let your hands do whatever they want. That work is done. Before we go there, I want to hand you the whole of it in one place so that you can carry it out of here without needing to remember an entire evening. 6 things. You did not have any of them when this began. You have all 6 now, and each one is a tool rather than a feeling, which means each one still works in 3 weeks when you feel nothing. The first is the carrier load, the distance between the weight assigned to you and the capacity currently online. Dread is a readout of that distance, not a report on your character. When you feel heaviness approaching your real work, you now know to ask, which of the 2 numbers is wrong, rather than asking, what is wrong with you? The second is the arrival gap. Recognition costs, capacity, and a system running in maintenance mode renders opportunity at low resolution. The things you saw 4 months late were not withheld. They arrived on schedule into an underlit room. The third is the competent absence. Maintenance is paid first out of a fixed budget, and creation is paid last, which is why you are formidable everywhere except the one territory you were built for. You have not been squandering surplus. There has not been surplus. The fourth is the borrowed ceiling, the limit you obey without having measured it, inherited from someone whose conditions were never yours. Correctly attributing a rule to its actual author strips most of its authority immediately. The fifth is the second silence, the quiet that comes after the yes rather than before it, which is not a rejection but an interval in which the only thing being built is your ability to continue without confirmation. You completed that training without knowing you were enrolled. And the sixth is the water edge. Confirmation is issued in contact, never in advance. You have not been spiritually deaf. You have been listening from outside the range where the signal transmits. 6 mechanisms, every one of them checkable against your own record. Not one of them requires you to believe anything about me. And I want to add one honest qualification, because I have tried to be careful all evening, and I am not going to abandon that at the end. These are patterns not laws of physics. I have watched them hold in a great many lives, including in mine, and I would put weight on them. But you are the only person with access to your actual record, and if any one of them does not fit when you check it, then it does not fit, and you should discard it without hesitation. A pattern that has to be defended against your own evidence is not worth carrying. Now let me tell you what to do in the first week after the weight actually lands, because almost nobody prepares for that, and it is where a good season most often goes sideways. When it comes, it will not announce itself as an answer to anything. That is the first thing. It will arrive looking like a demand, a request you did not expect, an opening that requires a response faster than you would like, a door that opens at an inconvenient hour into a room you do not feel dressed for. Almost nobody recognizes an arrival while it is arriving, because arrivals look identical to interruptions. So, here is the discipline. When something lands in the next stretch that produces both a strong pull and a strong resistance at the same time, do not resolve the contradiction before responding. That combination, pull and resistance together, in the same object, is the signature. Pure resistance is usually a no. Pure pull is usually appetite. The two of them arriving fused is what an assignment feels like from inside a human body every time. The second discipline is about speed, and it is counterintuitive. Respond faster than you are comfortable with and commit more slowly than you are tempted to. Those are two different clocks, and people confuse them constantly. Answer the door quickly. Sign nothing quickly. Most opportunities are lost in the 4 days of silence before a reply, and most disasters are agreed to in the first hour of excitement. The third is about capacity in the moment. When the weight lands, your first instinct will be to add it on top of everything you are currently carrying, because that is what you have always done. That is precisely how a good arrival becomes a bad year. Something has to come off. Decide in advance what it is, tonight, while you are calm, because you will not be able to decide it in the week when you need to. And the fourth is about company. There will be one person who responds to your movement with a subtle discouragement dressed as concern. It will not be malicious. It will come from someone who loves you and who calibrated their sense of you years ago and is genuinely alarmed by the recalibration. Do not argue with them and do not explain yourself. Just do not use them as a mirror in that particular season. That is the whole protocol. Recognize the fused signal, respond fast, commit slow, remove something before adding something, and choose your mirrors carefully for about 90 days. You will not remember all 4. You do not need to. You will remember the fused signal, and that one alone is worth the evening. Before the closing itself, the path described earlier in this message remains in the description and in the pinned comment for those whose spirit confirmed it while it was being described. That is the last time I will mention it. Everything that remains now belongs entirely to the ceiling, and I want to remind you of what is about to happen, because I do not want you to drift out in the next 90 seconds and miss it. I am going to speak a declaration over you. It contains the answer to the question I opened with, in a single word, and that word is going to close the loop that has been open since the first 2 minutes of this message. Then, I am going to ask you to speak something yourself, once, out loud, and it will be short, and then this ends. So stay. You have already given this a great deal of your evening, and the last part is the part that gets carried out the door. Let me say a few things first, in the plainest voice I have, because they are true and because you have not heard them said in this order. You have been steady in an empty room for years, and nobody clapped, and you did it anyway. You have kept promises to people who never learned they had been kept. You have prayed for things and then quietly stopped expecting them, not because your faith failed, but because you were protecting something in yourself that was getting too bruised to keep exposing. You have been called dramatic and difficult and restless and too much by people who were describing the exact qualities that the next part of your life is going to require. And you have been sitting in a long silence believing it was a verdict, when it was the tuning. None of that was wasted. I want to be careful and not say something sentimental here, so let me say it precisely instead. Not all of it had meaning. Some of what happened to you was simply wrong, and no arrangement of words redeems it. But nothing that you built in yourself in order to survive it is lost, and the strength you developed there does not know or care what produced it. It is fully transferable. That is the mercy in it. The training is real, even when the curriculum was cruel. So here is where we are. You came into this message frightened of something entering on the 1st of August. You are leaving it with a different problem, which is a much better problem, and it is this. You now know what has been holding the ceiling in place, and you cannot unknow it. And that knowledge is going to make the next 30 days uncomfortable in an entirely new way. That discomfort is the good kind. It is the discomfort of a person who has run out of explanations. And now I am going to speak over you. Let everything settle for a moment. There is nothing left to understand. I want to begin by simply acknowledging what is here, because acknowledgement has to come before anything is released, and most closings skip straight to the release. So, let it be said out loud, into whatever room you are sitting in. There has been a person here doing something difficult without being seen for years. Not perfectly, not without complaining, but without stopping, which is the only part that has ever counted. There has been a person carrying a weight in the center of their chest, calling it anxiety, calling it a flaw, calling it evidence against themselves, and carrying it anyway through every ordinary morning that required them to function. There has been a person who kept the room warm for other people while their own interior went quiet and thin. There has been a person who said yes in a room years ago, and then held that yes through a silence long enough to break most people, and never took it back, even when they had decided it was imaginary. Let that be witnessed, not rewarded, witnessed. There is a difference, and the second one is what you have actually been starving for. And now let some of it go, because you do not need all of it where you are going. Release the verdict you passed on yourself in the hardest year. It was drawn from incomplete information, and it has been running as though it were a fact. Release the sentence you have repeated to yourself since you were young, the one that begins with the words, "I am the kind of person who." You do not have to replace it tonight. Just release the automatic authority it has been carrying. Release the number you inherited from somebody who measured a different life under different conditions. It was never yours. It was never even tested on you. Release the requirement that you be certain before you are permitted to move. It was never a real requirement. Nobody who has ever been used had it. Release the years you catalogued as wasted. They were not empty. They were structural. Release the humiliation of the second silence. It was not a rejection, and it was never received by nothing. Release the shame attached to what came out of you under pressure. The container was not your fault, and the contents are not the container. Release the private accusation that you are the kind of person things do not stick to. You were handed plans that required capital you did not have, and you tried anyway, repeatedly, which is the opposite of what that accusation claims. Release the belief that you have been overlooked. You were not overlooked. You were in storage, which feels identical from inside, and is a completely different arrangement. Release the fear that this evening was just a feeling. 6 mechanisms, every one of them checkable. You are holding tools, not a mood. And release, finally, the interpretation you have been carrying since you first read those words about something dangerous entering on the 1st of August. Let that one go last and let it go completely. Now let me answer the question I opened with, and I am going to give you the word I have been holding since the first 2 minutes of this message. You asked why heaven would call it dangerous instead of calling it good. Here is the reason. Good describes a gift. Dangerous describes a responsibility. Those are two different categories, and they are given to two different kinds of people. A gift is handed to someone who is being cared for. A responsibility is handed to someone who is being counted on. The word is not dangerous because you are at risk. The word is dangerous because you are trusted. Sit inside that word. Trusted. Nothing heavy is ever handed to someone who is not. That is not a spiritual principle. That is simply how weight works everywhere in the world, in every family and every workplace and every account ever recorded. Nobody hands a heavy thing to someone they doubt. The heaviness of what is coming toward you is not a threat. It is the specification of the person it is being handed to. You have been reading a job description as a warning. And now hear what I am going to say over you, and receive it in whatever form your understanding allows, because it does not require your agreement to be true. You were not assembled by accident, and you were not left where you are by oversight. You were not the least of your family. You were the first one quiet enough to hear something the rest of them were too busy to notice. And quiet has always looked like smallness from the outside. You were not delayed. You were being made able to hold something without being destroyed by it, and that particular capacity has never once been installed quickly in anybody. You were not forgotten in the interval. You were being tuned, and the tuning is finished, and an instrument does not get tuned unless somebody intends to play it. You are not too old for this. Every single account you admire involves somebody who thought their window had closed and was wrong about it by decades. You are not too damaged for this. What you are calling damage is the only reason you have material that nobody else in the room has. You are not too late for this. You have been operating in addition while a season of multiplication was being prepared, and you cannot judge the second by the arithmetic of the first. And you are not alone in this, though I know that the last several years have made that extremely difficult to believe, and I am not going to pretend that the loneliness was not real. It was real. It was also temporary, and the reason it was necessary is that certain things cannot be built in company. Now stay with me, because there is one more movement, and it belongs to you rather than to me. I have spoken over you. Now you speak. Not because words are magic, because there is a measurable difference between a thing you have understood and a thing you have said, and the difference lives in your body rather than in your mind. You have understood a great deal tonight. You have not yet said any of it. So say these with me, out loud if you can, under your breath if you cannot, and if you are somewhere that makes even that impossible, then say them with your jaw, and let no sound come out, and it will still count, because your body registers the shape of a sentence, whether or not the room hears it. I am not the person who was never given a chance. I am the person who was being made able. I am not slow. I was carrying more than anybody counted. I am not late. I was being assembled for something that required this much time. I am not broken. I was pressed, and something came out of me that does not exist in people who were not. I am not too much. I was correctly sized for a weight that had not arrived yet. I am not waiting to receive. I am the instrument, and I am being picked up. I am not afraid of what is coming. I am standing close to it, and closeness has a feeling, and I have been misreading the feeling. I am trusted. That is what the weight means. That is what it has always meant. I am the one who stayed in the silence and did not take back the yes. I am the one who goes first into the unmarked place and comes back with the map, so that somebody younger does not lose the years I lost. And I am willing to move at 70% tonight, before I am certain. before it is comfortable, because the confirmation is issued at the water and never once on the shore. Say that last one again, just that one. I am willing to move before I am certain. Now sit in the quiet after that for a second, because something just happened that you will not notice for a few days. You have made a declaration in the presence of your own hearing. That is not a small mechanism. Every argument your system runs against you from now on has to be run against a sentence you have already said out loud, and that changes the terms of the argument permanently. You are no longer defending a hope. You are defending a record. And there is one thing left to do before this closes. Type the words, "I am ready to be used," not as a formality and not to be counted. There are two reasons, and both of them are for you. The first is that a declaration made where somebody else can see it behaves differently in your own mind than one made privately. Privately, you can revise it quietly next Tuesday and nobody will ever know, including, eventually, you. Publicly, it stays exactly as you left it. You will be able to find it. That matters more than you think in the third week, when the arrangement pushes back and the whole evening starts to feel slightly embarrassing. The second is that somebody is going to scroll past your 6 words on a night that looks a great deal like the night you have just had. They will not know you, and you will never know them. And your line will be the one that lands, not because it was well written, but because it was written by somebody who was clearly in the middle of it, rather than somebody explaining it from outside. That is the first thing you carry. It costs you nothing, and it happens tonight. So, type it. I am ready to be used. And if you want to make it real rather than decorative, put your one act of contact beside it. The smallest thing you are going to do this week that another person could observe. Name it. That is the difference between a declaration and a commitment, and it is about 11 words long. And then let the rest of this settle. There is a stillness available to you now that was not available an hour ago, and I want you to take one full breath inside it before anything else happens. Nothing is required of you in this breath. Nothing is being asked. You are not being evaluated, and there is no next step in this exact moment. Just breathe once in a life that has a different shape than the one you brought in here. It is sealed. Now, before you go, there are 3 small things, and they belong to the part of this that continues after the message ends. The first is for somebody else, not for you. Somewhere in your life, there is a person you have watched circle the same thing for years. You know exactly who they are. You thought of them at some point during this message, probably around the part about preparation and contact, and you moved past it because it felt presumptuous to send something like this to a grown adult who has not asked for help. Let me describe them so you are certain it is the same person. They are competent, almost aggressively competent, in every area except the one they actually talk about when it gets late enough and honest enough. They have an idea, or a project, or a leaving, or a returning, that has been in the same condition for somewhere between 4 and 9 years. Not abandoned. Never abandoned. Just permanently at the stage before the stage where anything becomes real. They explain the delay differently every year, and the explanations are always reasonable. That is what makes it so hard to say anything, and they are tired in a specific way that other people read as being fine. Send this to them. Do not attach advice. Advice from a friend about a dream is almost always experienced as pressure, and they have enough pressure. Send it and write one sentence, and the sentence should not be about them. Say that a particular part made you think of them, and name the part. That is all. They will do the rest or they will not. And either way, you have done the only thing that is actually available to you, which is putting something in front of somebody at a moment when they might be ready to see it. The reason I am asking is not complicated. This message reached you because it reached somebody first, and then it moved through a person, rather than through a machine. That is the only way anything like this has ever traveled. And there is a version of this where the specific thing that unlocks the next decade for somebody arrives from you on an ordinary evening with no ceremony at all. The second thing is smaller. If any part of this was useful, press the like before you go, not for the number, because the material only reaches people who are actually carrying something, and the mechanism that decides who sees it responds to that one small signal. There is somebody at the far end of that who is sitting in the exact chair you were sitting in 90 minutes ago. And the third is an invitation rather than a request. If you want to keep walking with this, stay. There are thousands of chosen ones moving through the same season from every direction at different points on the same road, and there is a particular strength that comes from knowing that the loneliness you have been carrying is not evidence that you are the only one. It never was. It was evidence that you were early. Now let me say the last thing. You came here tonight because a warning caught you. Something dangerous entering. A date. A word you did not like, sitting next to another word you did not understand. And whatever brought you here, whether it was fear or curiosity or the low, quiet desperation of somebody who has been waiting a long time, it does not matter now, because you are leaving with something different than you came for. You came for a warning. You are leaving with a job description. So walk into the 1st of August the way somebody walks into a room where they are expected, not braced, not apologizing, not gathering more certainty at the door. Let the wait come. It has your name on it, and it was measured against a version of you that is more capable than the version you have been living as. Let the scaffolding come down. You built it in a season when you needed it, and you have outgrown the shape it holds you in. Let yourself be located. Being findable is the only condition under which anything gets picked up, and you have hidden long enough, and the hiding cost you more than the exposure ever will. And let the fear stay if it wants to. It is allowed to come. It is simply no longer allowed to drive. You are not being warned. You are being handed something. You are not in danger. You are in demand. You were never the one who was passed over. You were the one who was being made able to hold it, and the interval is finished. Go gently now. Do the small contact this week. Watch what arrives in the 72 hours after. And remember, when the 3rd week comes and everything said here feels thin and far away, that the 6 things you are carrying are mechanisms and not moods, and that they work exactly as well on the days you feel nothing at all. The weight is coming because you are trusted. Carry it like somebody who knows that. And so it is.